Today we're 3 weeks deep on a series called There. Can y'all say there? Can y'all say it in Spanish? Okay, just testing. I can't either. There. Todd has done a phenomenal job over the last 2 weeks, has he not? My goodness, they were good. The first Sunday, I was all prepped and ready to preach on Father's Day and be part of the baby dedications. It just didn't work out that way. But looking back on that message with Zacchaeus, I mean, Todd, there's just such a good message about the fact that Jesus goes there. And that's the Savior that we have. We don't have a distant Jesus, but we have one that's willing to go there. And then last Sunday, I was not prepared for the monologue, the Shamgar monologue, but I've been mulling over it all week long about the fact that we are all Shamgars, in that we are all strangers in this world, and our work to be accomplished is tearing down strongholds with the truth of God's word, which is the ox goad. And so I was just like, what? Last Sunday, it was just, I'm glad that my thoughts can't be heard because I was so taken by last Sunday's message. And so Todd has taken the last 2 Sundays and just done an amazing job on this journey of there. And part of my preparation a couple weeks ago, I put out a question on Facebook just to hear from the Facebook community on a question about the role of a father. And it still applies for the message this morning. And so the question was simply this: what is the most important role of a father or of dad? And after I sifted through maybe 5 or 6 responses that had to do with bodily functions, which many of them were like, you need to teach your kids how to pass gas and how to fart in your armpits and stuff like that. And yes, those are very important, but I don't know that those would rise to the top as the most important. But in so many ways, the vast majority answered the question by saying the most important role of a dad is to be there. Well, to be there when? Yeah, exactly. Just be there. You never know when you need to be there, but when you're needed, you need to be there. And even when you're not needed, it's important that you're there. Because and this was all that was unpacked through that question. There are some that would say that the dad shows the children and shows the household different attributes and characteristics of who God is. It shows the children how to love a bride. And there are so many different layers to it, but all of those different explanations could only be accomplished if he's there. And so presence is vitally important. We can look at all kinds of different angles on this word there. From cover to cover, every story that we see through Scripture has a there factor to it. A person went somewhere or did something at some location, and either God spoke or God worked through, but there's always a there factor from cover to cover. And even in the day that we live in right now, we know that here and now is not all there is, because heaven is the there that we are all anticipating. And so there applies to so many different aspects of our life. I want to throw out a couple different elements to the word there. And let me just throw out some statements and see if you've ever heard these statements. One could be this. In regards to sports, and this is any sport, have any of you ever heard a coach say, "Get your head in the game"? Have you all ever heard that? Where's your head at? Because they are physically there, but a player plays different when they are also mentally and emotionally there. Because I've even seen athletes be there in their mind, but they have no passion to play, but they know the technicalities and the mechanics of the sport, but there's also that layer of being emotionally there, being mentally there, being physically there. It applies to any kind of sporting. Maybe you've heard this one. Those people over there are checked out. Maybe we would say it this way. The light's on, but nobody's home. They have a their challenge. Have any of you ever had a conversation with someone and you knew that they were not interested in the conversation? Yeah. And let's just say it's a big gathering where there's people that might know each other, and you're talking with somebody who's more interested in talking with somebody that's, in their eyes, more important than you, and so they're talking with you, but then casually and occasionally looking over your shoulder to see if somebody more interesting is coming by. They're not there, right? And what that does is it just makes you feel super valuable that I didn't realize that I was eating up so much of your precious time. Go ahead and find your people. And so I've definitely seen that play out. I've also seen a their factor play out in this way where, for example, towards the back end of July, we have a family vacation scheduled for one of the beaches in North Carolina. I'm just going to go ahead and just prep y'all. The Sunday that we leave, I'm going to do my best for it to be like a compelling message through the Word, but my mind is probably already going to be at the beach. I'm just being honest, because I love the beach. I love the taste of the salty ocean air. There's just nothing like it. And I love y'all, but man, I love me some beaches too. So we have these challenges of presence, being there. We could also throw onto the fire that looming question in our mind, God, what do you want to do through me? And when we ask that question, what we're asking him is, where do you want me to go and what do you want me to do? How do you want to work through me? Because I'm a physical being, that means that I need to physically be somewhere for you to do something, and so I want to know your will. Help me understand your will so I know where the there is. One of the interesting things about the $5 that we handed out, and thanks for your patience on that. I've been meaning to be more, to circle back around on that a little bit better than what we have. Nonetheless, when that was placed in individuals' hands, it was interesting to hear how some wrestled with the responsibility of what that meant. That this meant, what we were challenging the collective body to do was to go there and get a name and get a story. That's a there factor. We are naturally challenged in being there or going there. It's just part of our brokenness. And this isn't an introvert-extrovert thing. It's just a there thing. So we're going to look in Genesis 12 today. My whiteboard in my office is gaining more and more examples through Scripture of where we see there, where it shows up. I wanted to land here today because I think what we see through Abram is the process that we need to go through. I'm going to let you know that the overarching, some of the verbiage rather, is here versus there. The reason why I want to catch us up at the front is because I don't want us to take this literal. So what I mean by that is Abram started out at one place and God was sending him there. This is not one of those messages where I'm just trying to figure out where I'm supposed to be. Nobody, this isn't like me prophetically speaking that somebody's supposed to move to Virginia Beach, okay? You're not supposed to be here, you're supposed to be there. It's not about you not coming to this church and going to another church. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just helping us understand there's a process that God walks us through to strip us down so that the comforts that we are surrounded by here don't keep us from the there that He wants us to go to. And that's going to mean something different. Maybe that's an emotional thing. Maybe it's a mental thing. Maybe there's a mental block or mental hang-up that's causing you to stay here and prohibiting you from going there. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to read through this. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 9. Are y'all with me? Okay, this side is definitely with me over here. We have no real big setup with Abram. I mean, where we pick up on his life, he's 75 years old. We don't have much information except for his family moved from here to there, and then they landed in Haran, and they just stayed there. And we pick up in his life when he's 75. And the first recorded conversation that we have between Abram and God, it's a very dramatic conversation. It's not even like, hey, how's it going? God just goes for it with Abram. And this is kind of how that goes. The Lord said to Abram, go out from your land, your relatives, and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who treat you with contempt. And all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people he had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the site of Shechem at the oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I will give this land to your offspring. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there, he moved on to the hill country east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. He built an altar to Yahweh there, and he called on the name of Yahweh. Then Abram journeyed by stages to the Negev. Interesting. 75 years old. Can I just say this, that I don't know too many 75-year-olds that have the flexibility to dismantle their life and pursue the way Abram did. I've met some individuals who are 50 and older, and there is a regimen, and there is a way of living and you like your rhythms, and you like your patterns in life, and it's frustrating when those patterns and that rhythm gets frustrated or upset, right? It's like, I need to make these things happen at this time, or it's not going to be good for a lot of people. And so we just jump right into Abram at 75, and God says, go. Go from your land. There's 3 landing points that I think are so parallel to our life, and if we don't catch this, we will live in a constant state of here, never fully free to go there. We've got to do this. Go out from your land. Go out from your land. So we're going to break each of these down. Land, relatives, and the Father's house. The first landing spot is the land. This is people. This is the physical, tangible territory of the country. These are also the society presets and subsets that have been woven into the very core of who Abram is, its culture. for those of y'all that have lived in this region for a long time and you've seen how the territory has changed a little bit. You've seen farmers' fields turn into housing developments. You've also seen booming city places kind of hit a decline. You've seen these changes and these comings and goings and things like that, and you're familiar with all of those changes. There's probably some shortcuts that you know around here that nobody else knows, but that's because you're familiar with the territory. And there's a certain comfort that comes with being familiar. There's something important inside of all of us to feel at home. I mean, I love that. So we've been here just over 4 years now, and I love that I'm super familiar with the areas like Arabica, Ziggy's. Mostly they're just food related, but I'm loving that I know where places are. And there's a certain sense of home. Anytime we travel and then we come back home, there's certain streets that you go down and you're just like, home sweet home. Y'all know what I'm saying? There's a certain comfort. There's a certain sustainability, predictability to life. Everything else might be tumultuous and in turmoil, but there are some things that there's some comfort in some normalcy, in sameness. And God shows up to Abram, 75 years old, and he says, I want you to get out of here. All that is familiar to you with this land and with this territory, all the things that you find comfort in with your home, I want you to leave up out of here. Not only up out of here from a territory standpoint, but all of those presets that are in you. You know, from Amherst to Lorain to Elyria to Westlake to Avon, all of those different cities have micro subsets to them. Like there's a certain vibe and a culture with each of these different cities. And so if you think about that, there is a way of interacting with people, a way of embracing or not embracing people. There's just some ways, like you just know, oh, yeah, I can just tell by the way that their swagger is that they're from Lorain or from Elyria. And those that live in those cities, some of those individuals would even be able to distinguish between what part of Lorain you're from, because it's just woven into you. It's part of how you were brought up. And what God is telling Abram is he's saying, I want you to leave all of those subsets and presets that have been woven into you, because I want to do something different in you. I want to cut these things off and set you apart for something that I'm going to do. But it's going to require you to move from here to there. I wonder how well we are at detaching ourselves from physical, tangible culture and being set free for kingdom culture. I wonder how well we do that. Or on the flip side, I wonder how intense we are of embracing what we've grown up with more than the kingdom of heaven. Because if we apply Abram's life to us, and we allow what God spoke to Abram to speak to us, I just wonder how we would respond. Because what God spoke to him, he's speaking to us. All right, so let's keep going. I want you to go out from your land. I also want you to go out from your relatives. Let's bring it down even closer. All of those family gatherings, the family reunions, when you guys did 4th of July together, the way you celebrate birthday parties, all those quirky isms that make your family what they are, and how you celebrate different things, how you mourn about different things, all of that, what you think about money and marriage and all of that kind of stuff, all that your family and relatives have sowed into you. I also want you to go up away from your family, your relatives. I know they're all good and well people and they mean well and all that kind of stuff, but if you continue to live your life molded by their preferences and their ideology, you're not going to reach the place of there that God wants to bring you. Finally, I want you to go out from your father's house. The land, your relatives, and your father's house. This one literally hits at his home. I know Abram's 75 years old, but there was still the cultural trend for whenever the patriarch would pass away, there would be this thing called an inheritance. By Abram moving away from his father's home, his father's house, he's saying, I'm not interested in the inheritance that would come to me once my dad died. I'm not interested in the family property that would be available to me because I see that God is calling me to something different, something greater. Now, he doesn't know it at this first verse, but God immediately jumps into why this is important. Why move from your land? Why move from your relatives? Why move from your father's house? He goes on, he says this, I will make you into a great nation. A bold promise from God, from someone who's 75 with no kids. I just want you to know that God's promises might show up in your life at the most unrealistic time. And it may look like the most absurd promise ever. And I'm not being all Christianese and cliche about this, but God just doesn't operate the way that we operate. He doesn't do things the way that we think they ought to be done. He is all powerful, all capable, and so if he wants to tell Abram, "Hey, you're going to be I'm going to make you a great nation," then God's going to make him a great nation, even though they are well past the time of giving birth to a child. I'm going to make you into a great nation. That word "nation" just means people. I'm going to make you into a great people. I will bless you. This specific bless means to prosper. This is not a prosperity message, but I will say this, that historically, wherever the presence and the power of the living God is, there is fruitfulness and abundance. And so God is speaking over Abram saying, you're going to prosper in what you do. You're just going to go places and people are going to give you things because of my favor on your life. And it's not so you can tout how much you have, but I'm going to bless you that way because this next verse, I will make, well, hang on one second. We got to cover one more base. I will make your name great. I love this one. Y'all want to know what the word great means in the Hebrew? I will make your name grow. Come on, y'all. Really? I will make your name grow. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your name grow. The voice that you long to have, the significance that you long to have, once again, it has nothing to do with you or me, but it has to do with the greatness of God in us. Always. If we ever make it about us, we're done at that moment. We're done. Maybe that's another message that we'll look at, but Saul is like the classic textbook example of the moment he thought it was about himself, God was like, I'm done with you. I can't do anything with pride. God's blessing has nothing to do with growing pride in us, but actually it has to do with a growing sense of I am so nothing, and I am baffled that God would bless the way he's blessing. But what that does is it reveals your heart. Your heart can handle God's blessing because you know it's not about you. It's about his blessing you because you're wholehearted. And all of that is so that you will be a blessing. I'm going to bless you. I'm going to prosper you because you're open-handed with the way that I bless. It's really sad, y'all. I was sitting at my house the other day, and I was just, unrelated to this message, but I just realized sometimes how selfish I can be with some of the stuff that I have in my house. Like there's tools that I don't know that I'd let too many people borrow. Yet, countless men throughout the course of my life have let me borrow / ruin / lose their tools. But I won't let people do that with my tools. And it's absurd. and it's an issue that I'm working on. And I realize, man, that nothing here physical goes with us. So why are we like this ever with our stuff? Stuff. I so want him to bless in the reality of my nothingness, but all I have is a wholeness towards him. And here, have it. I want to bless. All right. Then God switches this to more collective scope, and he says, I will bless those who bless you. So the blessing doesn't stop at you, Abram. Anybody that blesses you, I'm going to bless them. But anybody that curses you, or I'm going to curse those who treat you with contempt. And all the peoples on the earth will be blessed through you. That is God's first encounter with Abram. I mean, talk about where do you go from here, right? I mean, at least like just have a whisper of like, Abram, I'm real. Like that would have done. That would have been fine, right? Like, look up here. Something smaller than leave everything. I'm going to bless you so you can be a blessing. Y'all, we have to walk through the same thing that Abram walked through on a daily basis. And I don't want to say that in a way where you're like, gosh, that sounds exhausting. I mean, there's a guy in the New Testament who's kind of important that said, anyone who wanted to come after me must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me daily. This is a daily conversation. Abram's making this decision right here. So it goes on like this. Let's continue, just for the sake of our time here. So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they accumulated, all the people they acquired, and they set out for the land of Canaan. How would you like that first day when you're walking? You're all packed up and you're walking. I want to give us some context here. Where they start and where they end is the distance between, roughly, Amherst and Atlanta. They didn't have Uber. They didn't have a rent-a-car. They walked their behinds there. All their stuff. And so some say it's hundreds of people. Some say it's thousands of people. Regardless, there's a whole ton of people and all their stuff and all their animals migrating to another place. Here's how this plays out. Abram, the man who just heard God, leading the way. I guarantee you this is one of the reasons why they didn't have children yet. Because one of the other children came up and said, are we there yet? Can you fathom if they had their own child? I mean, that whole Isaac scenario might have happened a lot sooner, right? So, are we there yet? I don't know. Well, where are we going? I don't know. How are you going to know that we've got there when we're there? I don't know. And like that's just within the first hour of the first day of them going. And I don't know how long it would take with that many people to go from Amherst to Atlanta. I'm sure it was probably more than a week. And so these conversations are probably daily to where people are probably like murmuring, like, what are we doing? What? Like, he heard from God, left his land, left his relatives, blah, blah, blah. Where are we going? And they slide through Canaan, and they go to Shechem, and they come to this place called the Oak of Moreh. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of God conversation in the culture at this time. There's a lot of mysticism, a lot of made-up gods and stuff like that. And so it's believed that this Oak of Moreh was a place where they would seek out spirits and whatever could be fabricated within the human creativity and seek out, sorcery and all kinds of just really bizarre stuff. So there was something distinguishing about this oak of Morah. These were really dramatic trees from what researchers say, just huge and a lot of shade cover, but there was the oak. Perhaps it was in the center of the forest, and it was just clearly different than the others, and spiritual stuff happened there. And so Abram parks his people there, and this is what happens. Then the Lord appeared to Abram. How do you know when you've gone from here to there and that you've arrived at the next there? When God appears. When God shows up. And I believe that in the same way that we are all uniquely different, I believe that God speaks to us in the unique way that He has wired us. I truly do. We don't need to go off of a rabbit trail here, but God speaks in an undeniable way, in only a way that you know that it's Him. And so what you have to be disciplined in, and what I have to be disciplined in, is that when He speaks at the here, and He's telling us to go there, we leave here to go there, and even if it's not clear yet, if we have not arrived there, we keep heading towards there until we hear Him speak. Basic, but it's amazing how many people will just go a day. Man, God spoke to me. He said, let go of the things that I find comfort in and that's familiar with me. And so I'm going to go. I'm going to forsake all and I'm going to go there. I'm not there yet. Day one. My family, they still see me. They look at me like I'm crazy. So I'm just going to go back to where I was, where it was predictable, where it was safe, where things made sense, where I had friends. They're just going to know me now as the crazy person that was kind of zealous, but then came back home. And I find more comfort there. I find more comfort here than the unknown there. It was at the oak of Morah that the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I will give this land to your offspring. And we see something that's, I don't know if it was recorded ever before this moment here, but this is one of the first moments where what Abram does next, it wasn't common, but he does something that we can learn from. Abram builds an altar. Second time God spoke, first time Abram built an altar. Why didn't Abram build an altar where God spoke first? He said more. He gave more of a vision in the here, back there. Why didn't Abram build an altar at the first time God spoke? Well, what was different between the two places? Well, Abram at the starting place was not standing in the promise. So Abram builds an altar as he stands in the location of the promise. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, okay, so I need to become like a connoisseur of rocks? Is that what this is about? No, we're not handing out GrowPoint bags of rocks so you can build micro altars in places. Oh, somebody must have had a God moment there. What does an altar look like today? I want to say this as strong as I can. If you don't write down the things that you see God do and the things that He speaks, start now. a booklet of paper with scribblings of God is your altar. And here's why. Because on the day that he speaks something to you and you write it down, it may not make any sense at all. March 2018, Josh, have your heart and your home ready to grow. Okay. I'll write that down. No idea that God would lead us to be called GrowPoint. And I had no idea that we would now have this little nugget at home that we've adopted. I wouldn't have known that in March of 2018. But at the moment that I heard God speak, I wrote down an altar. So that in those moments when I was doubting, I would venture back to that altar and I would remind myself what God spoke. Because this world has a crazy way of convincing you that God doesn't speak. You have friends that look at you like you're nuts, like, okay, you're riding the Christian crazy train, huh? You're one of those now. Yeah, actually I am. Whatever you want to believe, yeah, that's whatever. That's me. God spoke to me, and I wrote it down. Don't see it yet. Don't know how it's going to play out yet. I don't even get it, but I'm writing this down. I'm writing this promise down. I'm writing this word down. I'm making this my altar. So that in the days of doubt and when my soul and my spirit it's just kind of pewtering out on me, I need to have a reminder of what God has spoken. I'm going to circle back around to that moment and be reminded. Very, very simple, yet it's amazing how many people lack the discipline to write down the things that God has spoken. Write it down. Not only at the onset, but also as you're standing in the promise. Write down the initial conversation that you have with God, but definitely the moment you realize that you are standing in what he has spoken, please be disciplined enough to write that down. The Lord appeared to Abram and he said, I will give this land to your offspring. So Abram built an altar there. He built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Now from there, he moved on. He moved on to the hill country east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. He built another altar. He built another altar to Yahweh there. It's a new there. And he called on the name of Yahweh. I wonder, here's a couple of different perspectives on that, the second altar. I wonder if he built another altar as a visual reminder of what was spoken at the first altar. Or I wonder if there's something going on here where an altar was built when God spoke to Abram. An altar was built when Abram spoke to God. So it could play out like this. I want to remember today and how I called out to God. I want to remember this moment because this is the story. I'm going to be able to go back to the oak at Morah, and I'm going to go back to my pile of stones that I built for him to be reminded of what he spoke to me. But then here's another location, Bethel over here and Ai over here, and this is a moment where I was just raw and I cried out to God, and we don't know what he cried out. It just says that he called out to God. If he's anything like us, I imagine that calling out is, God, I don't see it. Yeah, I see the land. I just don't see the people. I see the territory, but we got no kids. I see the territory, but I'm 75. And so there are these honest conversations going on from God and from Abram to each other, and both of them are being built up as memorials with altars. As we navigate life and as we go through life, we need one of our greatest disciplines to be documenting when God speaks and when we speak. We can unpack that one for a whole other Sunday, because I think sometimes when we speak, God might be quiet, but we're with Him, and He's just like, why don't you flip to that page where you were talking to me with all your concerns and how you didn't see things, how you didn't think it was possible. I just want you to go to your page and look at what you said. And He's not condescending at all. He's just like a dad. Just go back to that one page before Isaac. Yeah, there's a little bit of doubt there, but Abram, at that point it would be Abraham. It happened, didn't it? I did that through you. I did that for you. I'm blessing you. Remember that you said that you didn't see my blessing. How about now? You see my blessing. You're seeing this happen. Y'all, we need to excel at documenting God's narrative in our life. So throughout this message this morning, there's 3 landing spots, and I'm going to give. I know we're just a few ticks past, but I want us to draw our focus to these 3 questions. It's really important on a daily basis to understand what we need to leave. There is always a here of comfort that we have adopted into our life and embraced into our life that is holding us back from going there. And so every day we need to walk out this conversation with God where we're saying, God, show me the here, the comforts here that I don't need to be comfortable with anymore. Secondly, what promises has He spoken that seem impossible? And please understand, do not get disheartened by the promises that seem impossible, because if the promises that God speaks seem doable on your own, I would doubt that they are His promises. Because if you can make blessings happen in your life, that has you written all over it, not God. And when you're standing in the reality of the promises, what are you building? Are you building nothing? Are you building your case against God, which doesn't make sense if you're standing in the promise? What are you building? So go ahead and take a few minutes. I'm going to do my best to not talk, to not coach you through those questions. Just take a few minutes, jot some thoughts down. If you're new with us this morning, we do this at the end of most messages where we ask a question or a series of questions. That way, we trust the Holy Spirit's going to speak to you and draw some things out of you. And so please, we just talked about being disciplined about writing, so why not start now?